Live from the BDN Studios, it's Bang and Dang.
That's awesome.
If you don't like that, then
You ain't black.
Welcome back to Battles of the American Civil War, Behind the Battles with your host Bang and Dang. Today,
here we go again.
we're taking a look at America's first ever ironclad ship. Or warship, I guess I should say.
Right.
Which, the old CSS Virginia, the Confederates, they stole the USS Merrimack and used it to build the first ironclad. And then shortly after, the old USS Monitor comes along and it leads to that epic battle between the two at the Battle of Hampton Roads. First time that two ironclads had gone at it. And nothing happened because neither of them did anything. And then the old Merrimack was originally, that Merrimack was launched by the Boston Navy Yard 15th of June 1855.
Okay.
It was sponsored by Mary Simmons and commissioned February 20th, 1856.
Oh.
With Captain Garrett Pendergrast in command. She was the second ship of the Navy to be named for the Merrimack River. Performance tests on the ship took the screw frigate to the Caribbean and Western Europe. Oh, wow, jeez.
Look at that shit.
Merrimack visited Southampton, Brest, Lisbon, and Toulon before returning to Boston and decommissioning April 22nd, 1857 for repairs. Rough sea. Recommissioning 1st of September 1857, the Merrimack got underway from Boston Harbor October 17th, and she was the flagship for the Pacific Squadron.
She rounded Cape Horn and cruised the Pacific coast of South and Central America until heading for home on the 14th of November, 1859. Upon returning to Norfolk, she decommissioned again on the 16th of February in 1860. The old Merrimack was still out of service during the crisis preceding Lincoln's inauguration. Soon after becoming Secretary of the Navy, Gideon Welles took action to prepare the frigate for sea, planning to move her to Philadelphia. The day before the firing on Fort Sumter, Welles directed that great vigilance be exercised in guarding and protecting Norfolk Navy Yard and her ships.
Well, guess what? When that Commonwealth of Virginia seceded from the Union in 1861, one of the important U.S. military bases threatened was the Navy Yard, which is now called the Norfolk Naval Shipyard.
Fantastic.
In Portsmouth, Virginia. Accordingly, orders were sent to destroy the base rather than allow it to fall into Confederate hands. And afternoon of 17th of April, the day Virginia seceded, Engineer-in-Chief B.F. Isherwood, he managed to get the frigate's engines lit. He said, let's get it out of here, boys.
However, the previous night secessionists had sunk light boats between Craney Island and Sewell's Point, blocking the channel. 20th of April, everybody smoking down on their blunts, baby. Before evacuating the Navy Yard, the United States Navy burned Merrimack to the waterline and sank her to preclude capture.
Yeah.
When the Confederate government took possession of the Foley Provision Yard, the base's new commander, Flag Officer French Forrest, he contracted on the 18th of May to salvage the wreck of the Merrimack.
Mm-hmm. This was completed 12 days later on the 30th, and she was towed in the shipyard's only dry dock, which today known as Dry Dock Number 1, where the burned structures were removed. Fun fact about Dry Dock Number 1, it's America's oldest dry dock.
Sure is.
And it's still in service.
Beautiful.
Good stuff.
Look at that. And nice.
1834 it opened.
Oh.
It's been in service since then. The wreck was surveyed and her lower hull and machinery discovered to be undamaged. Oh. Stephen Mallory, Secretary of the Navy, decided to convert Merrimack into an ironclad.
Might as well.
Since she was the only large ship with intact engines available in the Chesapeake Bay area.
Preliminary sketch designs were submitted by Lieutenants John Mercer Brooke and John Porter, each of whom contemplated the ship as a casemate ironclad. Brooke's general design showed the bow and stern portions submerged, and his design was one finally selected. He was like, we'll take that one, please. The detailed design work would be completed by Porter, who was a trained naval constructor. Porter had overall responsibility for the conversion, but Brooke was responsible for her iron plate and heavy ordnance, while William Williamson,
Bill Billiamson,
Billy Bill, chief engineer of the Navy, he was responsible for the ship's machinery. I mean,
makes sense.
Right.
The hull's burned timbers were cut down past the vessel's original waterline, leaving just enough clearance to accommodate her large twin-bladed screw propeller. A new fantail and armored casemate were built atop a new main deck, and a V-shaped breakwater was added to her bow, which attached to the armored casemate. This forward and aft main deck and fantail were designed to stay submerged and were covered in 4-inch thick iron plate built up in 2 layers. The casemate was built of 24 inches of oak and pine in several layers, topped with two 2-inch layers of iron plating oriented perpendicular to each other and angled at 36 degrees from horizontal to deflect fired enemy shell.
Well, from reports in northern newspapers, Virginia's designers were aware of the Union plans to build an ironclad themselves and assumed their similar ordnance would be unable to do much serious damage to such a ship. It was decided to equip their ironclad with a ram, an anchorism.
How are you going to feed it?
Right. An anachronism on a 19th century warship, which is
Anarchy, so basically outdated. You don't put that. A ram is like old people stuff.
Merrimack steam engines, now part of Virginia, were in poor working order. They had been slated for replacement when the decision was made to abandon the Norfolk Naval Yard anyhow.
The salty Elizabeth River, so salty.
Damn.
The salty Elizabeth River water and the addition of tons of iron armor and pig iron ballast added to the hull's unused spaces for needed stability after her initial refloat, and to submerge her unarmored lower levels only added to her engine's propulsion issues.
Right.
As completed, Virginia had a turning radius of about a mile.
Oh, wow.
Oh, geez. And required 45 minutes to complete a full circle, which would later prove to be a major handicap in the upcoming battle.
Right. And the
Monitor.
far more nimble Monitor. The ironclad's casemate had 14 gun ports, 3 each in the bow and stern, one firing directly along the ship's center line. The 2 others angled at 45 degrees from the center line. These 6 bow and stern gun ports had exterior iron shutters installed to protect their cannons, obviously. There were 4 gun ports on each broadside. The protective iron shutters remained uninstalled during both days of battle of the Hampton Roads.
Virginia's battery consisted of 4 muzzle-loading single-banded Brook rifles, plus 6 smoothbore 9-inch Dahlgrens. They were salvaged from the old Merrimack. 2 of the rifles, the bow and stern pivot guns, they were 7-inch caliber and weighed 14,500 pounds each. They fired a 104-pound shell. The other 2 were 6.4-inch cannon of about 9,100 pounds, 1 on each broadside. The 9-inch Dahlgrens were mounted 3 to a side, each weighed approximately 9,200 pounds.
Ooh.
And they could fire a 72.5-pound shell up to a range of 3,357 yards. Plus had an elevation of 15 degrees. So.
Both the midship Dahlgrens nearest the boiler furnaces were fitted out to fire heated shot.
Oh, burn those wood boats.
On her upper casemate deck were positioned 2 anti-boarding personnel 12-pounder howitzers. Virginia's commanding officer, Flag Officer Franklin Buchanan, arrived to take command only a few days before her first sortie. I think that's stupid words. The ironclad was placed in commission and equipped by her executive officer, Lieutenant Catesby Ap Roger Jones.
Catesby, son of Roger Jones. Catesby Jones.
Lieutenant Catesby Roger Jones.
The Battle of Hampton Roads began March 8, 1862, when the Virginia engaged the blockading Union fleet. We got a whole episode on that. Despite an all-out effort to complete her, the new ironclad still had workmen on board when she sailed into Hampton Roads with her flotilla of 5 CSN support ships, which were the Raleigh, the Beaufort, the Patrick Henry, the Jamestown, and the Teaser.
The first Union ship to be engaged by the Virginia was the all-wood, sail-powered USS Cumberland, which was first crippled during a furious cannon exchange and then rammed in her forward starboard bow by Virginia. As Cumberland began to sink, the port side half of Virginia's iron ram broke off, causing a bow leak into the ironclad.
Oh, no.
Seeing what had happened to the Cumberland, the captain of USS Congress ordered his frigate to shallow waters. He's like, ooh, get the fuck out of here. Where she soon was grounded. Congress and Virginia traded cannon fire for about an hour, after which the badly damaged Congress finally surrendered. Like, oh, shit.
While the surviving crew of the Congress were being ferried off the ship, a Union battery on the North Shore opened fire on Virginia. Outraged at such a breach of war protocol, you're not supposed to.
Right.
In retaliation, Virginia's now angry captain, Commodore Franklin Buchanan, he gave the order to open fire with hot shot on the surrendered Congress as he rushed to Virginia's exposed upper casemate deck. When he went up to the casemate deck, he was injured by enemy rifle fire. Congress, now set ablaze by the retaliatory shelling, burned for many hours into the night, a symbol of Confederate naval power and a costly wake-up call for all wood Union blockading squadron.
Yep. They're like, yep, no more wood.
Get that wood out of there.
Virginia did not emerge from the battle unscathed, though. Her hanging port side anchor was lost after ramming Cumberland. The bow was leaking from the loss of the ram's port side half, which was shot from the Cumberland. Congress and the shore-based Union batteries. They riddled her smokestack, reducing her boiler's draft and already slow speed. 2 of her broadside cannon, without shutters, were put out of commission by shell hits. A number of her armor plates had been loosened. Both of Virginia's 22-foot cutters had been shot away as well, as had both 12-pounder anti-boarding, anti-personnel howitzers. Most of the deck stanchions, railings, and both flagstaffs gone. I mean, you're going to go into war, you expect some damage, bud.
Jeez. Well, even so, the now injured Buchanan ordered an attack on the USS Minnesota, which had run aground on a sandbar trying to escape the Virginia. However, because of the ironclad's 22-foot draft, fully loaded, she was unable to get close enough to do any significant damage. It being late in the day, the Virginia retired from the conflict with the expectation of returning the next day and completing the destruction of these old woodies. Said, we'll get them tomorrow. Nothing. It's not like another ironclad is going to show up and do anything.
Well, later that night, the USS Monitor arrived at Union-held Fort Monroe. She had been rushed to Hampton Roads, still not quite complete, all the way from the Brooklyn Navy Yard, in hopes of defending the force of the wooden ships and preventing the rebel monster from further threatening the Union blockade fleet and nearby cities, like Washington, D.C. While under tow, she nearly foundered twice during heavy storms on her voyage south, arriving in Hampton Roads by the bright firelight from the still-burning Triumph of Virginia's first day of handiwork.
Well, that next day, March 9th, the world's first battle between ironclads took place.
Fantastic.
The smaller, nimbler, and faster Monitor was able to outmaneuver the larger, slower Virginia.
I can't believe Britain or France didn't have ironclads yet.
They did.
So the world's first battle.
Between them, yes.
Right, so they had them, just never used them, huh?
But neither ship proved able to do any severe damage to the other. Despite numerous shell hits by both combatants, many fired at virtually point-blank range, too.
Right.
Monitor had a much lower freeboard and only its single rotating 2-cannon gun turret and forward pilot house sitting above her deck. Yeah, it was like a submarine, basically. And thus was much harder to hit with Virginia's heavy cannon.
After hours and hours of shell exchanges, Monitor finally retreated into shallower water after a direct shell hit to her armored pilot house, which forced her away from the conflict to assess the damage. Like, oh shit. The captain of the Monitor, Lieutenant John Warden, had taken a direct gunpowder explosion to his face and eyes, blinding him while looking through the pilot house's narrow horizontal viewing slits. Monitor remained in the shallows, but as it was late in the day, the Virginia steamed for her home port, the battle ending without a clear victor.
Well, the Virginia ran away, in my opinion.
All right.
Well, the captain of Virginia that day, which was Lieutenant Catesby Roger Jones, he received advice from his pilots to depart over the sandbar toward Norfolk until the next day. Lieutenant Jones wanted to continue the fight, but the pilots emphasized that the Virginia had nearly 3 miles to run to the bar.
Right.
And that she could not remain and take the ground on a falling tide. To prevent running aground, Lieutenant Jones reluctantly moved the ironclad back towards the port.
You got to. Virginia retired to the Gosport Naval Yard at Portsmouth and remained in dry dock for repairs until the 4th of April, 1862. The following month, the crew of Virginia were unsuccessful in their attempts to break the Union blockade. The blockade had been bolstered by the hastily ram-fitted paddle steamer USS Vanderbilt and the SS Illinois, as well as the SS Arago and the USS Minnesota, which had been repaired. Mm-hmm. Should have been killed at Minnesota.
Virginia made several sorties back over to Hampton Roads, hoping to draw Monitor into battle. The Monitor, however, was under strict orders not to re-engage. The two combatants would never battle again.
Wow.
April 11th, the Confederate Navy sent Lieutenant Joseph Nicholson Barney in command of the paddle-side wheeler CSS Jamestown, along with the Virginia and 5 other ships in full view of the Union squadron, enticing them to fight. So here we are.
Come on. When it became clear that the Union Navy ships were unwilling to fight, the CS Navy squadron moved in and captured 3 merchant ships. The brigs Marcus and Sabaut, and the schooner...
What is this all? What is this all?
Is it schooner or schooner?
Schooner, man. Schooner boomer.
And the schooner Catherine T. Dix. Their ensigns were then hoisted, Union side down, to further taunt the Union Navy into a fight, as they were towed back to Norfolk with the help of the CSS Raleigh. By the late April, the new Union ironclads USRC E.A. Stevens
it's in the game.
and USS Galena had also joined the blockade. On May 8th, 1862, Virginia and the James River Squadron ventured out when the Union ships began shelling the Confederate fortifications near Norfolk. But the Union ships retired under the shore batteries on the north side of the James River and on Rip Rap's Island.
Rip Rap. May 10th, 1862, advancing Union troops occupied Norfolk.
Oh.
Since Virginia was now a steam-powered heavy battery and no longer an ocean-going cruiser, her pilots judged her not seaworthy enough to enter the Atlantic, even if she were able to pass the Union blockade. Virginia was also unable to retreat further up the James River due to her deep 22-foot draft.
Yeah, so, I mean, it was very limited.
In an attempt to reduce it, supplies and coal were dumped overboard, even though this exposed ironclad's unarmored lower hull. But this still was not enough to make a difference.
Without a home port and no place to go,
Oh.
Virginia's new captain, Flag Officer Josiah Tatnall III, reluctantly ordered her destruction in order to keep the ironclad from being captured. I mean, the Union wouldn't do anything with it either.
Right.
The ship was destroyed by Catesby Jones and John Taylor Wood, who set fire to scattered gunpowder and cotton strewn across the ship's deck. Early on in the morning of the 11th of May of 1862, off Craney Island, the fire reached the ironclad's magazine, leading to a massive explosion that obliterated the ship. What remained of Virginia then sank to the harbor floor. Is it still there today? I bet it is.
Well, an eyewitness account of the destruction of the Virginia stated that tar, oil, fat, and grease were spread over the decks and set on fire. She had been burning fiercely for about an hour and a half when the terrific explosion tore her to pieces.
Damn.
The air was thick with large and small pieces of timber. Huge sections of red-hot iron plate were torn off and whirled through the air so much like paper. The shore and water for miles around were covered with pieces of the wreck of every conceivable size and shape. The ill-fated vessel sank immediately. Not a vestige of her remained above water.
After the war, the government determined that the wreck of Virginia needed to be removed. In 1867, Captain D.A. Underdown salvaged 290,000 pounds of iron from the site, much of which was taken from the ship's ram and cannons. The next year, Underdown detonated explosives under the Virginia's hulk to fully clear the river. But the attempt did not totally remove the wreck. 1871, E.J. Griffith recovered an additional 102,883 pounds of iron from the seabed. And in 1876, the remaining timbers of the ship were finally raised, no longer to be a part of the ocean.
Jeez, well.
Or the channel.
Right. 1982, the National Underwater and Marine Agency, they explored the area around Craney Island and found that there are no large areas of either concentrated or scattered debris associated with the Virginia line on the river bottom within the survey area.
Cool.
Most of the recovered iron was melted down and sold for scrap. Notably, some of the ship's iron was used to craft Pocahontas Bell in 1907. What is that? Other pieces of the ship have been preserved in museums. The ship's brass bell is held at the Hampton Roads Naval Museum. And one of the Virginia's anchors now rests in front of the American Civil War Museum in Richmond.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Really?
Numerous souvenirs, ostensibly made from the salvaged iron and wood raised from Virginia's sunken hulk, have found a ready and willing market among Civil War enthusiasts and Eastern Seaboard residents. However, the provenance of many of these artifacts is impossible to prove, which has given rise to the humorous adage that if you took all the iron and all the wood supposedly collected from the wreck of the CSS Virginia, you'd have enough to outfit a fleet of ironclads.
Right, everybody's like, this is from the Virginia. Sure. Although the Confederacy renamed the ship, she is still frequently referred to by her Union name. When she was first commissioned to the United States Navy in 1856, her name was Merrimack with the K. The name was derived from the Merrimack River near where she was built. She was the second ship of the U.S. Navy to be named for that river.
We knew this.
Which is formed by the confluence of the Bemigewasset and Winnipesaukee rivers at Franklin, New Hampshire. All right.
Well, the Merrimack River flows south across New Hampshire, then eastward across northeastern Massachusetts, before finally emptying its dirty water into the Atlantic at Newburyport, Massachusetts. After raising, restoring, and outfitting as an ironclad warship, the old Rebs bestowed on her the name Virginia. Nonetheless, the Union continued to refer to the Confederate ironclad as the Merrimack, or the Rebel Monster. Cool. In the aftermath of the Battle of Hampton Roads, the names Virginia and Merrimack were used interchangeably by both sides, as attested by various newspapers and correspondents of that very day. Navy reports and pre-1900 historians frequently misspelled the name as Merrimack without the K, which was actually an unrelated ship, hence the Battle of the Monitor and the Merrimack. Both spellings are still in use in the Hampton Roads area, so like it's stupid.
Well, in case you guys want to know how to spell the Merrimack correctly. Jeez.
Wow.
Well, that was a little less than I thought it was going to be, but I was expecting at least 30. Yeah, that's it for the CSS Virginia.
Didn't do much.
Next week, we'll be covering the other ironclad, and this one's got a
little more of a history.
Crazy story because they do a bunch of batteries.
All kinds of stuff, don't they?
And gets recovered.
Beautiful.
After whatever happens to it. Look at that. Look at that damn thing, dude. It's like a freaking submarine.
Dude, look at all those dents from fucking shells and shit, dude. I love it.
Yeah, but it's got a nice little story for that, so that's going to be a good episode next week. So join us then on Behind the Battles of the American Civil War. And as we close out one ironclad and move into the next one next week. So see ya then. We are the Monthly Music Gainers Week.
Bang, bang.